in terms of the draft,
Yeah.
what are you really looking at maybe closer than something else this week? I mean, I know it's the same philosophy every year, but is there a position group or something in specifically you want to look at?
I mean, it is to a degree, but not like crazy. Like you may, if you feel you're gonna lose guys to free agents, or you got to move on at certain positions, or you got to make changes not only for this year but upcoming years. You go, hey, we got to continue to have depth because guys are gonna expire out for whatever age, contract, whatever it is. You know, you may have more. Like for example, we can interview 45 players on these formal interviews. Some years you may end up with, it weighted more to offense. Some you could have weighted more to defense. Sometimes it's by guys it's not necessarily about what you need. It's maybe you got more questions on, just in particular of those guys, things you want to get to know. So it's still very early, to be honest. This is all fact-finding, and sometimes we're doing things here for elimination. Like, let's meet with this guy. What we've heard is he's not very smart. He's going to struggle to get on the field. I know what you see athletically at school X. So we get him in here and spend time with him, get him on the board. And we've had some people before, it's been a train wreck, and they're like, yeah, this, as talented as he is, whether we take him off the board or whether we move him way down and say, okay, he'd be worth a flyer in the 7th round, but we're not taking him in the 2nd. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Conventional wisdom is defensive tackle, edge, running back, tight end. All pretty
Is that
good.
your wisdom or conventional?
Conventional.
All right.
More than not just mine.
I got it, Mark.
Would you just generally, you got to quibble with that it's, it's not bad at least.
I get it. I get where people are at. People are always, some years I come here and you guys are like, you guys got to get a number 1 receiver, or you guys got to, get an offensive tackle. Because our offense played as well as it did, for a good portion of the year, and maybe we came up short on defense here or there, people are going to naturally say, what are you going to do to fix this or fix that? Us, like, our core philosophy doesn't change. We have a quarterback. We want to protect him, and we want to get after the other team's quarterback and stop the run, all those things. So we've always, as long as Sean and I've been here, believed it's built up front. We're constantly looking at that. And listen, I'll look at myself, like there's things I can do better to make sure we're stronger in some of those areas. And so we'll always start there. But we're going to look at every position from now through free agency and then till the draft in April.
Brandon, you've had time now to look at Milano's season. He's 2 years in a row now, though, of major injuries. He's 30. He's the cap numbers up there. Where do you think things are with Matt in terms of his future?
Yeah, I mean, Matt's had a couple tough breaks, no pun intended, as far as his situation, starting with that game in London, and then kind of the freak deal in practice this year in camp. But I thought you started to see him getting back into form, made some plays, had a sack or two, some nice splash plays in the playoffs. And so, I'm happy for Matt that he's going to have an off season. He doesn't have to rehab, have a surgery. That's taxing on these guys. I think, all of us, myself included, can forget, how taxing that is, for these players if they're having a surgery that's putting them out for all of spring. They just want to prepare, lift, train with the whole team. You're kind of on an island doing that. But with Matt's situation, there's, we expect Matt back at this point, and again, I'm excited that he's healthy and not having to have a surgery or a rehab situation.
Hey Brandon, what does James Cook have to do to be able to be on more 3rd down situations?
I think it's just James can play on 3rd down. I don't think there's a reason he can't. If I was gonna say anything he can improve, probably pass pro, like continuing to improve that. And I think James, from when we drafted him to where he is today, has drastically improved that and done a good job. But we're always working to get better. He's definitely a weapon in the pass game, and so he can be a 3-down player whenever he wants. You're also trying to keep him fresh, and you're trying to build depth there and try to utilize the other guys as well.
Hey, Brandon, Sean Dolak, the UB kid, is the only draft-eligible All-American not here. What would be your message to him as he goes along this process and deals with this adversity of not being here?
Yeah, I would just say look no further than Joe Andreessen. And I know Joe didn't necessarily get those same accolades you're talking about, Ryan, but you define yourself, and don't let anyone else define you by, being invited to a Senior Bowl or the Combine. He'll have his opportunities to showcase, and maybe he's undrafted, or maybe he is drafted. Who knows? That time will tell. But Joe Andreessen wasn't drafted. There's been many players. Another UB guy, Cam Lewis. Look what he's done for us in this league. He'll have his opportunity to showcase himself, and just be prepared. Don't worry about the naysayers. Just go out there and take advantage of every rep he gets in a rookie camp, a training camp, whatever it may be.
Hey, Brandon, can you justify on James Cook again? I mean, he asked for $15 million, which is a bit much. But even if it was, say, 10 to 12, right, like what Saquon got, can you justify that with a guy who was on the field 45% of the time?
I mean, listen, I don't want to get into what we can justify or not. Like every contract has its own nuances to it, and you're comparing the market and things like that. James is a good player for us. He has the ability to be, as I was telling Joe, a mismatched player. He can play all three downs, and so he helped us. He helped our offense do a lot of great things, and we would love to keep James here long term. Ultimately, as you guys know, sometimes we're able to make it work, and today announcing Shakir's deal. It's a deal that we believe it makes sense for us, and Khalil and his representatives make sense. Sometimes those happen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't happen today, but maybe they happen in a week or a month or next year. So we'll keep those dialogues open with James or other players that are up for extensions, and if we feel it makes sense for both sides, we'll definitely do it.
I know you said that you maybe prefer some of the negotiation stuff stays, maybe not as public as James has made it. How do you approach that as when a player you still have under contract for a year make something public like that? Do you talk to him? I guess how do you approach that from your perspective?
Oh, when I see him, I'm gonna get him in the headlock and give him a noogie or something.
I'll appreciate
it.
that.
James would love that.
Yeah.
But he's, at the end of the day, James is a good young man. He really is. Nothing he's done is malicious or anything like that. He's everyone wants what they perceive to be their fair market value, and I respect that. And again, if I could give him advice, I would say let's just keep that in house. But it doesn't change my viewpoint of him, and I don't think any differently. And when I see him, whenever that is, next week, spring, whenever I next see him, I'm going to give him a hug, love him up, and tell him let's roll.
So I asked you earlier about the speed element for offense, and it does seem like it's been a common theme at times in the offseason. But when you evaluated this past season's roster, did you feel like there was a consistent enough vertical threat for the offense?
That's a loaded question, Jay. I mean, I think we have speed. Was it enough speed? I don't know. Maybe you could say we didn't have enough speed. I think we scored 30 points. I think we had the most points of anybody. I think Boyko was telling me even of Philadelphia when they combined. So, we averaged over 30. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? If we were, 20th ranked offense or something, and that was constantly showing up, I would probably agree with that. But listen, I can always do better, and Sal asked the question earlier. I'm not hiding from speed or don't want speed. Those are one of the, we always talk about grading the critical factors of a player in our scouting world, and speed is right up there. Once you get into their physical measurements. So, do I think it cost us winning the Super Bowl? No. Could we improve it? Yes.
You're very self-critical, like you've been over the years. Your approval rating over the years has been about as high as any GM in the league, especially within the fan base. There's memes about you. The big baller Beane, it goes around on social media. There's been a recent trend in the fan base, unrest about the lack of hits in the early picks. I know you're very self-critical. What do you say to those that are wondering, all right, when are you going to find an impact player early in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that is on me, and I've got to. Even if the impact was higher, I would want it to be higher than it is. I think ultimately sometimes you have to let things play out a little bit, and I know people, like I feel like just hearing some of our staff kind of tell me some of the things that are out there, whether media or social media, as they prepare me for these things, it's like a little bit of like Dalton Kincaid, people being down on Dalton. Like, I don't really understand that. Like, Dalton's a heck of a player. Dalton fought through a tough year injury-wise. Could have easily shut it down, had plenty of reasons to shut it down. I think we should be applauding Dalton Kincaid for what he did, plowing through what he was dealing with. Not easy. And so I've seen what he's had. Teams would shut guys down, put them on IR, and we had lots of discussion. But Dalton wanted to play, wanted to fight through it. And so let's be fair to him. And we saw what he can do his rookie year. That tells you everything. So did year 2 for Dalton Kincaid go the way he envisioned, or we didn't? No. But sometimes you run into some obstacles. Cole Bishop this year, as I was saying earlier, missed a month or maybe a little bit more at the most critical juncture of a rookie season. When we get to training camp is where they have to learn it and prove is football. Guys can look good in t-shirt and shorts in May and June, but until you do it in pads, it really only holds so much water. And Keon Coleman, 21 years old, did some good things. I think if we had won the Super Bowl, I don't think people would be as down. I think it's a little bit of, well, you didn't win the Super Bowl, and Keon didn't do this or compared to this player. Keon was trending up and gaining confidence within our locker room, within number 17, Joe Brady doing this and this. When we got Amari there, I thought it took some pressure off of him. And if you look at those games, those first 2 games he had after we got Amari, but then Amari hurts his wrist, and then a week later he does. It was just, again, I think we can be quick to judge and young players. Again, you're talking about a 21-year-old. Let's give it time. Let's see what year 2 looks like and year 3 for Dalton Kincaid before we decide the fate of their status or their career.
Greg, take 2 more, please. Speaking of early picks, when did you make the correct Rousseau season this past year?
I thought Greg did a nice job. Had some good games for us. Still showed some ascension. I don't think he's necessarily like peaked out or anything. I think Greg needs to continue to take another step. We would like to see Greg be a double-digit sack player, and you got to get that quarterback down, and I know he would want that too. But I thought Greg, was really, one of our most consistent D linemen all year, and look forward to him, going into year 5. Hopefully even taking another shot.
Brandon, the Chiefs have lost twice in the last 5 years in the playoffs. Both times in the Super Bowl, both times, I think you would fairly say, dominant performances by the opposing defensive line. Yeah. That's the team you guys are trying to get past. How much does that knowledge and watching the results of those games shape your thinking this offseason in terms of building a defensive line to go up against that specific? And I know you're not building a team just to play the Chiefs, but that's who's beating them, and that's how they've done it, is up front with the defensive line. So how much does that shape your thinking in the offseason?
Jay, since we've been here, we've tried to build it up front. If you're going to win these big games, your best players have to play their best. Okay, they do. On whatever your best 5, 10 players, whatever they are. And most of the time, that's who's going to win. It's not a philosophy change. Tampa Bay, to your point, what they did to Kansas City that year with their D-line. I mean, you can go back to when the Patriots were almost undefeated and that Giants D-line took them down. Like, the team that I was a part of in Carolina, both Super Bowl teams. You go back to the first one, we had Julius Peppers, Mike Rucker, Chris Jenkins, Brenson Buckner. That was a heck of a D-line, okay? So I was taught early, like, build it up front. You look at our D-line we had in Carolina in 15 when we lost to the Broncos. Charles Johnson, Starlo Laley,
Short.
kept K1 short. We had the same thing, build it up front. So it's not changing our philosophy. Obviously, I've got to do my job and find the best talent that I can find. We also have to fit them in the cap. We also have, we draft where we draft. So sometimes that can make it a little harder. But again, it's ultimately on me to make our O-line, our D-line, and everything else as strong as I can. So it's not oh man, I didn't know this is how you win it. It's just, we got to do it. And again, as Matt says, like, I'm looking at myself. I gotta do better.